Welcome to the Autism in Black podcast, where we focus on all things autism and the Black parent experience. Our goal is to always educate, support, and empower parents to advocate for not only their children, but themselves. I'm Maria Davis-Pierre, a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida and America's #1 autism advocate for Black parents. I'm the founder and CEO of Autism in Black Inc., where we aim to include the excluded.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Autism in Black podcast. I am your host, Maria Davis-Pierre, licensed mental health counselor and the CEO and founder of Autism in Black Inc. Today, I am here with Dr. Samara Toussaint, who is a passionate advocate for neurodivergent children and their families, dedicating her career to empowering them through education, advocacy, and culturally sensitive care. Her journey as a Haitian-American woman navigating mental health stigma in her community deeply informs her work as a clinical school psychologist, driven by her commitment to breaking barriers and increasing awareness about mental health and neurodiversity within diverse immigrant communities. Enjoy today's episode with me and Dr. Toussaint. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Autism in Black podcast. I am here with a very special guest, Dr. Samara. Hi, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I've already read your impressive bio, so let's just get right into it. I always like to start by asking what brought you into this work and what keeps you grounded in it, especially as a Haitian-American clinical school psychologist navigating these systems.
I think like most mental health therapists and psychologists, what draws us to this work is our own experience. And for me, I always say like I want to be the psychologist that I needed when I was younger, someone that was able to navigate culture and reach my mom. And at that, in my school, they just didn't have that. They didn't have someone who kind of understood her language and was able to speak to her in a way that she'd be able to understand. So it ended up working not in my favor when I needed support. And when the school psychologist reached out to my mom, like she had a very visceral reaction and got really more upset with me. And then from that point on, I was just like, no, I need to be somebody to children that can bridge the gap between schools and families, especially immigrant families. And through my practice, that's what we've been really doing. A lot of Haitian families feel comfortable reaching out to me, especially because my last name, which is Toussaint, it's very French. But it could be Jamaican, Trinidadian, Guyanese, Afro-Caribbean. They reach out because they're just like, I get it. Like they want someone to speak plain to them. They want someone who will break it down and not just kind of say it in the Western way, but just the way they can understand. So that work really moves me. And it really moves me to really work with Haitian people, Haitian parents, Haitian families. So it means the world.
Shout out to our Haitians, as you all know, Dr. Barry is.
Yes.
You and I have talked about this briefly as well. I think that's another intersectionality that people do not truly understand, because yes, we are Black people, but when you start talking about the Caribbean roots and how culture is within the Haitians household, I had to learn a lot in being with Dr. Barry for 20 years and how autism is viewed and how we have to maneuver things and how basically, you better get right. We coming over here, you better get right because we don't got time to play games, right? So
That's how they are.
I can fully understand people because they see the Pierre and they're like, okay, that's one of our people. She's gonna know. She's gonna know.
Yeah.
But you do need that representation because it's so important. So shout out to you and shout out to what you're doing for that. Um, I want to switch gears into talking about Black autistic women and Black autistic girls, because we know that so many Black autistic girls and women are misdiagnosed,
Mhm.
late diagnosed here, misunderstood, often because we've learned to mask. Um,
Yes.
can you talk about what that looks like in our community and how you, as a clinician, really go above and beyond to look beyond that masking to make sure that proper diagnosis and things are happening?
One thing, that's such a great question. And I want to speak from a professional perspective and also a personal perspective because I can see both.
Mhm.
But I want to say last year when I returned from maternity leave, I was opening up more assessments. I wanted to say, I want to reach more people. And one thing I noticed was that I had an increase in women seeking evaluations for autism or ADHD and or both. And it was interesting because I noticed a lot of trends and patterns. And a lot of times the main theme was burnout.
Mhm.
Like just saying, I am just constantly burned out, I am constantly depressed. And what ends up happening with autistic women in particular, or neurodivergent women, is that they will be diagnosed with depression or generalized anxiety disorder. But the thing is, that is secondary, or even sometimes like the third, fourth, fifth issue. The real issue is a history of them having to mask to fit in and to overcompensate for their difficulties. And one thing I hear often is, I don't know who I am. I don't really know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. This doesn't make any sense. And they're just kind of grasping at straws, trying to figure out like their identity. So there is an identity crisis. But the problem is, if you're 20, 30 years old, people will say, oh, yeah, that's developmentally appropriate. Because on some level it is. Because in your 20s, right, you are still figuring out who you are. But I think it's completely layered and complex for girls and for women, adult women, because the difference is you had to mask your identity as a young person,
Yes.
as a younger child. Like girls have to learn, and I always say it's difficult for girls because there's a societal pressure to be feminine, to be sweet, to be kind. Like there's no like neutral affect. It's like you need to smile. You need to smile. You need to be pleasant. You need to be sweet, especially if you're growing up like a Black Afro-Caribbean girl. The
Mhm.
pressure, the amount of times when I was younger that I've heard, you need to smile more. Why
Mhm.
aren't you smiling? Like smile, smile, smile. You're not giving grace. So I
Mhm.
think that that's the first mask that we put on as neurodivergent women, is just having to be like, you need to smile, and that already got forced into, I have to fit into this feminine role that you're putting in for me. And from there, it just spirals, and you just kind of have to be like, okay, so what do you want from me now? Okay, I'm a teenage girl. Okay, can't do this. I can't do that. This is what you want me to do. So throughout your life, it's just a series of, these are the roles I need you to fit into. And that's what makes it so much more complicated for women when they are finally adults and they're just like, okay, what role do you want me to play now? And who am I now? What do you need now? That's like what we are. We're always constantly in service and to other people. And I see so much people pleasing behaviors in women. That is like a number one. Like what you're so used to being, always saying like, I need to be doing this for this person, or that I need to be this person for my parents, but it's split. And just from a personal perspective, and I just want to say shout out to you and your conference,
Thank you.
because that was a driving force for me getting evaluated. I was sitting with women who were autistic, and I was like, oh goodness, like this sounds like my childhood. But it just goes to show that I do this work. I mask so well, I fooled myself.
Yeah.
Like I want to be real. Like I masked so well that I fooled myself
Mhm.
into thinking, oh no, there's nothing wrong. That's how strong my mask was.
Mhm.
And I was finally able to drop that mask and get the diagnosis and get the validation I needed to affirm everything I knew to be true, and just be on a journey of finding out who I am.
Mhm.
And I always say that I'm starting with what I don't like, because what I don't like was always the thing that was my mask that I had
Exactly.
to put on. It was just like, oh, for example, I don't like concerts. It's very loud, overstimulating, but I kind of I was like, oh, let me do it because my friends are doing it. It makes them happy. So let me make them happy. So I think part of the mask for a lot of women is what did you do for other people to make them happy, to fit in, to be that woman, that perfect person, and then kind of go from there to unravel and find out who you are.
I love everything that you said, especially about how we go in. Because when I went into my psychiatrist during COVID, it was to get medication because I was like, oh, like this ADHD is out here really doing a number on me. And what I was
Yeah.
actually experienced was autistic burnout. You know,
Mhm.
my psychiatrist, thankfully saw past what I was presenting and was like, you're autistic. And like you, I was like, oh gosh, I have put that mask on for 37 years. I am a clinician and I'm in here just baffled that this man has said to me, you're no, it's yeah, you do have ADHD, but you're also autistic. Like, sir, stop playing these games. Like,
Mhm.
what's really going on here? And it really was like, oh my God, it makes so much sense. I relate to my children in a manner that what they're doing is not seen as the norm, but it's the norm to me. So having individuals who are able to be like, this is what it is, and you get that validation means a lot. So I'm so thankful that you were able to sit in the conference and be like, these are my people.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also why I was drawn to this work. I'm drawn to this work. I get it. And even when I was evaluating women, I spoke to them and they were just like, how'd you know that? It didn't even click then that I'm like, yeah, do you do this? Did you do this? Don't grow up doing this? And they were like, yeah, yeah. But it didn't click then.
And when you were just explaining that, so I'm like, that is what women do. Like, we are so exhausted. We're going in because we're exhausted. We don't know why we're exhausted, but we're so exhausted because we are constantly masking, and that's
Mhm.
going on for us. So I'm so happy you really explained that in terms that people listening will be able to understand, and maybe they're like, oh, maybe I need to get evaluated in this manner. So thank you.
Mhm.
Shifting, I also want to talk about what are the emotional and psychological cost of masking, and how can families, clinicians, and educators better support unmasking in safe, affirming ways? Because we know that for Black individuals, we have to think about our safety.
Yeah, it's so true. I think that the psychological toll, when you think about it, like we say it, but I think it's immense
Mhm.
because it is extremely hurtful, even just for me on a personal, like to sit here and to say, even like, I'll say my age, I'm 35, to sit here and say, like, I don't know who I am,
Mm.
that it's so deeply grounding, but also painful because it's just like I'm on a journey to find out who I am because there was ripped of me at every piece by piece by piece. And I think that, and I recently came from a wellness retreat and we were just talking about masking, but I think that there's code switching, which is you're able to kind of like be yourself around your friends, but that's not necessarily the case with autistic women.
Mhm.
I think that we go into spaces at work and we code switch and mask. So
Mhm.
there's a layer to that. And then when you go home, you're not fully yourself.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then when you're with your friends, you're not fully yourself. So the masking is much worse because we're never truly ourselves, even in spaces where we're supposed to be safe.
Yes.
And that can be unnerving and it can just be unsettling. And I think the cost of that, well, again, of course, that can lead to depression. And
Mhm.
I think it leads to a bunch of other psychological issues that people struggle with, severe anxiety, not wanting to go out, and when you're stimulated, but you don't know what to say, like you're keeping all that inside. And I recently have been talking about silent panic attacks because
Mhm.
that's also a thing. People think that panic attacks are very like, oh my gosh, you see someone clenching to or holding their chest and like, like, hyperventilating. But there's also silent panic attacks where people don't see what you're experiencing. And I think for a lot of neurodivergent people, that's the case. Like you can just be, you're on the inside, like I have to hold it together because they can't see me break down.
Exactly.
And yeah, so it's constant depression, constant burnout, constant anxiety, and you're living in a state of fight or flight every single day of your life because you don't want anyone to see who you are. And I recently have been saying to people that CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, I started to realize it's not as effective with neurodivergent people, especially late diagnosed, because we are just what, we're treating the smoke without fire.
Exactly.
So I have been encouraging more, and I recently learned about internal family systems, which I absolutely love. I think it's, I've been using it in therapy and I've been recommending to others and I've been learning more about it. And I think it's such value because the goal is to return to yourself. The goal is because you create all these different parts of yourself and they're parts, but they're not who you truly are. And I just think that that is what I've been recommending to families and to neurodivergent adults. Like, try other systems. And also, acceptance and commitment therapy act, I think, is also a really great alternative to CBT. And also including multidisciplinary approaches, like seek an occupational therapist and a mental health therapist, nutritionist and a mental health therapist. I'm always like, and I always encourage, even for children, teens, or adults, like build a team. You want a team because sometimes, to be honest with you, I'm saying as a therapist, therapy may not be enough. And you may need to consider different aspects because you have such a different, layered, complex clinical profile as a neurodivergent person that, sometimes I've been hearing this a lot from people like CBT is not working for me, therapy is not working for me. And I'm just like, therapy is not working for you because that's the only thing that you're using. And you have to think outside the box and realize you may have other needs. And sometimes like therapy can become a chore for neurodivergent people. They're sitting down, it's like, okay, I did the homework. Should I feel better now? And it's just like, no, like there's something else going on here. And that mask is probably the reason why your therapist is treating your mask and not you.
Exactly. That's a word. I mean, and just in thinking back to what you were saying, I know as a kid, I heard a lot of fix your face, fix your face, fix your face.
Mhm.
And that was something that I'm always like, oh, what is my face saying? What is my face? Like, let me
Yes.
focusing so hard on making sure my face is not showing my thoughts. And that was something that it takes a lot of effort. It takes
It's
a lot of effort. And it is something that does lead to that burnout. That's a type of masking. And like for girls,
Mhm.
fix your face. Why are you showing, what's going on type of thing. And it is something that takes that toll on you. And like you're saying, when you're going to therapy, and if your therapist isn't aware and they're using just one modality, as a therapist, I recommend that,
Mhm.
yes, you can have a niche, but you should be able to shift with your client.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah. Yeah.
it ain't working, you should be able to shift to something else. And that fixing of the face when you're going in there, your therapist, if they're not aware of masking, if they're not aware of neurodivergent
Mhm.
individuals, they may not know that that is not who you
Yeah.
are
Absolutely.
hiding all of that because it's so ingrained in you to do it. So it's so important to have a therapist, a clinician, whatever, that is trained to understand the nuances of neurodivergent, like you said, and having a team that can
Mhm.
do those things. Because OT with sensory, that is super
Yes.
important. That has helped me so much because I have a thing with balloons, cork poppings. It's automatically gonna make me cover my ears and
Mhm.
not take it, right? So working with an OT, and you're not too old. I am 41. Okay, so you're not you when you have sensory issues and sensory overwhelm. Those things are needed, and there's no shame in it. So I love that you said build a team because teams are needed. I think a lot of times we focus so much on children having teams that we
Yes.
children grow up to be autistic adults. We need supports as well. So I'm really happy that you stated that because it is so needed. Um, I want to talk a little bit about the evaluations, especially through a culturally responsive lens. When I get my clinicians on here, I love to chat about this because it's one thing that triggers me is an evaluator who does not understand that culture walks in the room with their client and they're just like,
Yes.
the assessment says, da, 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 da. If you don't look beyond that assessment, then you need to probably go back and learn some things. But evaluations can be traumatic. They can be dismissive, especially for our Black families. What are some specific ways that you're working on how to change evaluations and how they're done for Black families?
I noticed that one thing in particular is one of the reasons why a lot of Black families don't feel comfortable with other providers, especially Caucasian white providers, is when they're discussing discipline and not having an open conversation about that. I think, and I noticed this too when I worked in the schools, because I worked in New York City schools for over 10 years. And they never felt comfortable. They would just be like, listen, this is what I do. But at the end of the day, you have to realize that that is what they know. You know, I did a lot of work in therapy, realizing my mother has generational trauma. My grandparents and my great parents all were in survival mode. So they just passed down tools that they know. That is a lens that you have to look at everything and understand that, and just understand that, like, especially if they're coming from a different country, like there's no word for autism in Haitian Creole. I can't fault you for not knowing something and feeling a disconnect when I tell you autism. You're just like, well, they don't have that in my country. It's just like, I understand there's not a word for it, but still very much present, you know? And I think that how I approach evaluations is I just want to say, I want to open the space and just be like, I am an expert in mental health. You are an expert in your child. I just want to let you know right now, you know more about your child than I ever will. I know about mental health. We're going to bridge these two worlds together. I will not presume to think that I know more than you about your child. I can only make my, assumptions and my conclusions based on what you tell me, but you're going to inform me about your child, and I'm going to inform you about what I know about mental health, and we're going to come together. And if religion plays a part in that, I love it too, because and I think that's what's missing from other spaces, is that parents, especially Black parents, aren't allowed to talk about that. They're not allowed to talk about that religious aspect and to question. And I was like, if you want to question God, if you want to question why this is happening to you, I allow the space for them to do that, because that's a big part of it. A lot of people don't talk about this, but some families don't feel welcome in the Black churches. Some people don't feel welcome in those spaces because when they bring their neurodivergent child who has a problem with, all these different sensory things coming at them and they have a meltdown, then everyone's like, "Ooh, why'd you bring them?" Like, you need to, you want to go to the waiting room?
Or beat them, just beat it out of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, beat it out of it. Yeah. So I think I allow all the space in the world to just sit and let me know, like, why you're mad at this person, why you're mad at your pastor, why you're mad at your grandma for not understanding. And that's what they need, that space, the frustration, because parents are burnt out too. It does affect a lot of different levels for parents. They're going to have grief. It's just like, I wasn't expecting this. I don't know what happens. You have to allow them the space to understand that, like, your life is going to be very different now from what you expected. Vacations will look different. Going to the restaurant will look different. Not saying it's a bad thing. We're saying it's going to look different. And here's how you prepare for it. Because what people don't realize is that oftentimes parents, because of the media and Hollywood and all these movies, have a very neurotypical way of how my child is going to play out. Like, they're just gonna have a neurotypical life. And then when that doesn't happen, they're like, I don't know how to respond to that, because no one says, here's another way that your life may look like. It's just, this is how it's presented. My child grows up, they do this, they get married, and it's the whole pattern. But like, when parents are not presented with those options, it's very scary. And I realize that no one gives them the space to feel comfortable and to air that out.
I so agree with my clients. I have the tools that I've learned, and you're coming in with your lived experience. And when we marry those two together, that's when great work can happen. Because as clinicians, we are not the experts in individuals' lives. Like, we have to really understand that they're coming in with their expertise, and we have to be able to utilize that. And a part of them letting down their guard and their defenses, especially for Black families, because when they see those letters behind our names, they think CPS. They think, oh, you're going to try to come in get my kid taken away if I'm truly honest with you. That's why it's so important, like you said, to have the spaces where they can truly say what's on their mind and have no judgment, and understand that you have the right to be mad at God. You have the right to be mad at your mom. You have the right to be mad at grandma because she said your child was bad and you need to be, yes, be mad. That's okay. We can work through those things. But if you're not being honest, if you're not truly telling us what's going on, then we can't give you those tools to deal with those thoughts.
Yeah.
So it's so important to have spaces where we are offering true inclusivity, true neuroaffirming, and true areas for truth. So I love that you give those tips. I know that you're working on some exciting projects around executive functioning and also have a book in the works. Can you share a bit about that with our listeners? Because I know that they are going to want to be able to get access to those things.
Yes, yes. So just about the executive functioning coaching, I recently started that. I want to say last fall, really because I noticed again that the needs were not being met by CBT. And I think that sometimes people are already incredibly aware, and just like helping them challenge their thoughts and come up with another one is not helpful. It's just like, no, I need you to help me take off the mask. I need you to help me show up to work authentically myself, or I need help with relationships. I have a new diagnosis. How do I kind of talk about that with my friends? So I realized a lot of this, or even like workplace accommodations. I recently started executive functioning coaching for that reason. How do I help you set boundaries at work, at home, at school? How do I help you unmask in your relationships? How can we help you organize, plan, all these different things? How do I help you organize your wellness plan, your wellness routine, your morning routine, your sleep routine? So I think that we just recently started. We're starting to see like a lot more effects. I think more children are in our program now than adults, but we're starting to get more adults. So that's something that we offer here in New York. And also, like, because it's coaching, we can offer it virtually worldwide or nationwide. So because it's not a service that is covered by insurance typically, but that's something that we offer, and I'm really happy with what we created. And my book is going to be about a little girl who masked, based really on myself and my experiences and experiences of other little Black girls that I've seen. So it's just going to be a love letter to Black girls who were taught to to kind of hide themselves and smile when they didn't want to, and do things when they didn't want to, and just to please people. So it's in the works right now. I'm really happy and excited. I'm working with a team. So I'll definitely share everything with you, and you can follow me on my social media. I think I put in my bio, but it's at School Psych Dr. T. So hopefully we'll have something by the fall.
Oh, I love that. And I'm definitely going to be snatching up several copies, handing them out like Tic Tacs over here. Like, you probably need to read this.
Yeah.
Very excited about that. As we wrap up, this is a question I like to ask all of our guests. For the parent, the educator, the clinician listening, what's one shift that they can make today to better support Black neurodivergent individuals and their families with care, not control?
If I had to say anything, and this is the journey that I'm facing as I go out into the world and I tell people that I knew and love that I'm autistic, is to listen, is really to sit and listen. And the immediate response is to say, no, you're not. But I want you to sit with that emotion and be like, why is it that it's hard for you to believe that I might be neurodivergent? Do you have an issue with autism? And do you have an issue or a view of autism that contradicts with what I'm telling you? So I think that we have to I want people to reflect back and also to expand their view of what autism is. Because I think that's what the issue is that some people are just like, no, autism means that you can't do this. Or they think of Rain Man, or they think that it's something that mainly affects white people. Like, they're not seeing it in the Black community, so therefore it doesn't exist. So I think that people really have to expand their worldview on what autism is, and when someone tells you that they're autistic, to listen.
Oh, I love that. I Love that. Listen. So thank you. Let all the listeners know where they can find you. I know that they're going to be running to your website. Remember, you can get that executive coaching anywhere. This doesn't have to be in New York. But if you're in New York, you can get a lot more services as well. So let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah. So the name of my practice is Path to Growth Counseling Services. It's one word, path, the number 2, growth counseling services. And we have an office in Floral Park, which is on the border of Queens, Long Island. So it's nice that we offer, like you said, more services, especially in person. I love seeing people in person. And we take insurance if you're in New York, but we also have interns that I train. So I'm able to offer therapy at an affordable rate. So we can see you. There's like no excuse. We got you. Insurance or not, we gonna make it work. I don't want to ever hear people say like, no, I can't do it. No, I have come up with it. If CBT is not working for you, we got coaching. Like I try to make sure that I'm able to help, even when it comes down to testing. Again, like we'll offer affordable rates for testing. So I never want someone to say, I can't afford it or walk out saying I didn't get anything. We will give you something. So Path to Growth Counseling Services, and it's www.pathtogrowthcounseling.com. And then you can find me on Instagram and TikTok, School Psych Dr. T.
Perfect.
School Psych DRT.
Perfect. And we're going to have all of those links in our show notes so that you can easily access them and get in touch with Dr. Toussaint. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing so much. I felt like I was so seen talking about how it is that masking and how it can really impact us. So thank you for being so transparent and sharing with us.
Thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Autism in Black podcast. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
If you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you can always be notified when a new episode drops. To get the resources shared on today's podcast and the show notes, make sure to go to autisminblack.org/podcast. Don't forget to share your takeaways from the show on your IG stories and Twitter using our official hashtag AIBpod so that we can find and share them. If you want to continue the conversation from today's episode, join our Autism in Black podcast Facebook community at facebook.com/group/AIBpod.